first, and we did talk about this backstage for a bit, but when did you first talk to each other after the nominations? You're both first-time nominees. Like, how great was that conversation?
Well, we texted a little bit. I was working an hour or two after the phone call came from Danica Smith over in the corner there, which was the best early morning wake-up call I got ever. And then we were kind of texting and
He
stuff
sent
like
me
that.
some emojis, didn't Smiley face, love heart.
Smiley. And then we went in. No, what was great was after work, we hooked up with Martin and Kerry and a bunch of people, the first speaker and all of that, a bunch of people in there. And we just had, for an hour or two, we just had a chat and did a few bites to eat, and that was a pretty thrilling night, wasn't it? That was so we had a great old chat that time.
It was lovely. Kerry lives in my neighbourhood, or I live in hers, so we both share a neighbourhood. So she came over to the house, she texted me earlier in the day and she said, you know, what are you doing? Are you going to watch it live, or will you wait to get the phone call if it happens? I'm a bit of a loose end, I don't know what to be doing. So I said, do you want to come over for a cup of tea? And she said, let me think about it. And then she texted me, she said, right, I'll see you at 5. So 5 o'clock in the morning, and she came in under the cover of night. It was all felt very scandalous, like we were up to no good. And I had a few family members. I was saying, my 2 sisters, 1 brother-in-law, and my youngest boy was supposed to be getting up for school in a couple of hours, but I woke him up early and I put the kettle on, made some cups of tea, and the box of Ferrero Rocher came out. And as I was saying, when the box of Ferrero Rocher comes out back home in Ireland, you know it's a serious occasion. So, and we just kind of it was fun. It was really fun. It really was, you know, it was just lovely, a lovely moment, and that's what this, whole thing is or has been so far. Just all these lovely moments that are built around this shared experience that we had that means a lot to all of us, you know, including the people at home that we're getting texts from, and, you know, it's lovely.
Well, this is a shared experience that goes back to 2000.
7 years ago, and Colin wasn't really developed as such in it. In fact, I got a bit of a shock because he basically blanked Porrick, and there was no real particular exploration why. And I met Martin afterwards in a long chat, and I said, I'm not sure what to explore here exactly. And then we spent a couple of hours talking. I said, no, I know. And at the end of it, he said, and then I suddenly realized, I said, look, Martin, if you need me to do some kind of Beckettian, you know, person, a kind of a, you know, a sort of just a being that is of itself a malign force, or in some way, I said, that's no issue, I will do that. I just don't know what further to explore in him. And so he said, no, I know that, which he obviously would. And he was dissatisfied with the script as it was at that point. And so then when there was a situation I think he went through in his own life that where he kind of he had a breakup, and he went off, he took the script, he was about to abandon it because he just wasn't finding inspiration to make anything that he thought was good enough.
Was he about to abandon?
I think he was, yeah. And
close call?
yeah, totally. And then, but it cut kind of deep, and he wrote the new version in 10 days. And when I got it, my heart went up through the roof, because there was this involved, sort of layered, enigmatic, sort of busted up sort of character who had, it was just the whole artistic sort of quest was, and I knew it was not manufactured. I knew that he hadn't just summoned it up to kind of give the old actor a few good lines. It's nothing about that about it. The exploration was something that I know that he has struggled with in his own life, about how far you commit to the damage you do, the peripheral damage of seeking artistic expression and creative independence and all that sort of stuff. So the first time that I really read the script was 3 years ago, and as I say, my heart was soared. Yeah.
What about, Colin, for you, when you first read, was it around that time? And what was
I preferred the first version.
Yeah, he did.
My character was cooler. It was all very, and what Brendan's saying, I recognise every word, and we've spoken about this before, the first iteration versus what came back to us 3 years ago when Martin sent the email with what became this film now, the script for this film. He sent the email to Brendan going, hey fellas, I did a bit of work on this, have a look and tell me what you think. But the first version was much more narratively complex. The story points were more twisty and turny. There was a soldier that came from the mainland and kind of, I think, had an affair with Siobhan, or she fell in love with him, and there was a big shootout on the beach at the end. I ended up in a rocket chair, bleeding out with a gun in my hand. It was amazing. And then I read the new one and I was like, oh fuck, I'm dull. And this one scared me much more, but scared in a good way. Do you know what I mean? You want to be a little bit afraid of the material. You know, it's the kind of the fear is something that's born of uncertainty, and uncertainty is what your curiosity kind of leans into when you go to work. So again, like he said, my heart's sore as well. I mean, just the idea of getting to work again with Brendan and Martin, and I knew that Kerry was going to be involved and stuff. So yeah, I was nervous, but excitedly so.
What scared you?
I suppose the fear that you just wouldn't serve it. You know, you're always I think, I mean, you could throw in as well just the fear of the degrees of exposure, and I suppose somewhere inside, you know, you don't ever want to be confused with the character. you know when you hear Martin say, "I wrote it for you," and then you read, and you're like, "Really?" Yeah. Really? So look, I have an ego, so there's bits of that, of course. But you know, it's just, did you want to? It was like what Peter Weir said when he won the Governor's Award. Peter Weir got a Lifetime Achievement Award this year. He said, "You've to serve the script's ego. It really should never be about the actor's ego or even the director's ego. But the script has an ego, and that's what you have to serve, and that's what you're always hoping that you can meet." And Martin McDonagh creates such extraordinary worlds of such kind of tenderness and violence and hilarity and heartfelt interrelations that, you know, you just want to rise to meet that. You know, there's no you never hear Martin say it's not on the, you know, there's a thing here where you get a little bit of, well, it's not on the page, you know, it's not on the page, or will, you know, or you're trying to elevate something. There's none of that. Martin's script, it's kind of the ones that I've read, that we've read, I think, they're things of perfection. I mean, they're so alive, the page is almost moving as you read it, and so you just want to do a good job, you know.
So Brendan, when you were talking with Martin, when you were your approach to playing Colin, did you ever ask Martin, like, okay, I think we've all kind of been there when we don't want to be friends with someone anymore, or something that happens to one of us, but with the fingers, did you ever ask him, like, why is he doing this with his fingers?
I did. Brave.
Yeah.
And the reason I was kind of fascinated, apart from the obvious, was that he also wrote a play called The Behanding in Spokane, and that also involved cutting a hand off. And I said, okay, I don't look for, you know, necessarily linked themes in Martin's work. It's not that kind of thing, really. But this was something that kind of, I said, because I actually went looking.
Did you online?
I went looking online for people who could draw fingers. And it was like, there was one guy over in Asia somewhere who lost it with his wife and cut it off in absolute rage and frustration. But that was a different thing to the measured, premeditated thing that happens here. It had no bearing on it. It was like somebody just lost in a fury, mutilated themselves, which was a tragic story, obviously, but I couldn't, it just didn't seem to be a thing, and I'm wondering, and Martin then enlightened me, really, which was, I was very surprised, because he's always really honest but they kind of just actually kind of put it in front of me, and he said that it's a writer's nightmare, the same way as an actor dreams of, you know, a nightmare where you walk out and say, what play is this? I have no idea what my line is. No, calm down, it's okay. I have no idea what play this is. Oh Jesus. And you sweat until you wake up in that limbo. And so Martin said a writer's facility to express himself through his hand, through his fingers, through the physical act of writing. The nightmare is that they would lose that ability to express their creativity. So whatever the artist has is, the facility to do and to express comes through. Obviously, you can do different things if your hand is busted up, but symbolically that's what happens, that there is a dream. At least he gets it.
Wow.
Yeah, so the mutilation was something that was so, when he's looking for the ability, he's trying to say, I will wound the thing that is most important to me. I will wound the thing that is most important if you don't give me my head back and let me do what I have to do. His degree of desperation or whatever it was, we know his way of kind of going about this whole thing was catastrophically misplaced. But that's what the significance is that he pledged the most basic thing he valued, which was the ability to do that. And when it became apparent that he'd have to call his own bluff, he did it once. And I remember there's a scene in where he looks at his finger in the bed, and we kind of talked about it. He said, Martin, so what do you think? He just had it there. You know why the scene was there particularly, I don't think. Just wanted him looking at it. And I remember feeling that there was a large degree of satisfaction about, maybe Martin had something to do with that, I can't remember, but about a large degree of satisfaction that he had pledged the most meaningful thing, and he had carried through with it, which meant that his artistic sort of drive was now being committed to fully, that he had actually mutilated, but he still tries to replace the three fingers then. So and then he obviously goes right over the top then, and it goes where he says, right, that's it, I'm doing away with that too. And then you see him at the end and he's teaching the young lads to do it. But there's that kind of madness of sort of creative sort of commitment, where he said, yeah, I gambled it all. I gambled it all, and I paid the price, and I'm still moving forward. And so that's why he doesn't really see the mayhem that's been caused around him, and all the human cost of all that. So that's the explanation for it.
Wow, I'm so glad I asked that question.
This isn't called there. The thing that Martin did develop since in Bruges was this ability to write spaces that could be filled by things that, like, for example, even that scene about looking at my finger, where he had that as part of, perhaps he feels this, but he had left a space for it to be something or maybe something else. And so that takes a kind of, he moved into a new area of self-trust in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Didn't he?
Yeah.
Confidence in his own
Yeah.
ability to be able to find, he knew, and then sometimes he'd have, I want an option there. And he, as Colin said, he'd bring you right way around. But in terms of us, like, it's an impossible question to answer, certainly. It's an impossible question to answer, really, too, because of the way we gelled on In Bruges. Part of what he wanted to explore was the dynamic of saying, right, let's split the two of these up then and see how they get on. Which means that, because one of the things that he really wanted to do, he wanted to serve it properly, to serve In Bruges properly with the next one. And he wanted to get into places, say, where these are characters you hadn't seen us, the actors, the cast, do before. He wanted to bring us into new places. So I think he specifically looked at the bond that was there, and then decided, okay, let's make it stop. Yeah, anyway, so in terms of the trust that we had, I think it helped in the fact that in the writing or the concept of it, that Martin wanted to actually use us to see what happened when it ruptured.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I want to ask last year.
Really, I suppose.
Is it mine? Yeah, it probably is, because my one went odd.
We're getting back it now.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Look, be a lady. It was lovely. I just spoiled. I didn't do those 4 films. They came out within a 12-month span, but I didn't do them on 12 months, of course. Yeah, I did. They were like 2 or 2.5 years or something like that. And fun, just fun. So much fun to do, just because they were all very again, not by design of the filmmakers, but I was just fortunate enough to get the call from Cognada and read after Yang and loved that, and I'd met Ron Howard a little bit through the years, and then that came around, and The Penguin was something that, I mean, that it wasn't supposed to look like that, or that was, honest to God, it was all Mike Marino. You know, I was going to do a Penguin that was much more the way I look, or a version of the way I look. Yeah, it wasn't like, because people are like, why would you hire that actor and then bury him and all that? And I get that, but I get it. I get why people go, why, but Matt Reeves didn't hire me to bury me in anything. Matt Reeves hired me and I was going to do it, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And then Mike Marino, the mad genius that is Mike Marino, did this drawing and created this character and sent it to Matt Reeves, and Matt Reeves was like, holy shit. And Matt Reeves said to me, have you talked to Mike? And I said, no, we were in his office in London. And he said, do you want to see what the Penguin looks like? I was kind of like, yeah. And he showed me, and I thought, holy shit, why don't you just cast another? No, I didn't say that. But I jumped at the opportunity, you know, it was something. So it's to answer your question, it's been so much fun, man, to work with Cognada, Matt Reeves, Ron Howard, who I've adored all my life, going back to Splash and Parenthood, and then of course our dear friend Mark McDonald, you know, yeah.
So I want to ask this really is a true ensemble. I mean, of course it got nominated for 5 SAG Awards, including Best Cast. This feels like the best cast. But I want to ask about working with Barry Keoghan and Kerry Condon, because it's not just the two of you. This entire cast just has a great dynamic.
No, and it's something that I'm really glad you brought up because I swore that I was going to, Gary Lydon, who plays the policeman.
Yeah.
The bravery of that performance, unstinting in his commitment to it, and we're all getting kind of little plaudits here and there and stuff, which is fantastic in the film. And the great thing about SAG is it's putting the ensemble in there because it was truly an ensemble. And Gary Lydon, to me, is I just haven't, you know, the commitment that the whole cast had. Sheila Flynn is 90. The Banshee herself is 90. She's doing a one-woman show at the moment.
Oh my goodness.
I swear, I'm not joking. 4 weeks into 90, yeah. It's
amazing.
It's absolutely, you know, and
Did you get a picture of her from the set? Did you get a picture of her from the set? The nuns have it on. I got a picture from the script supervisor on Banshees. She sent you one as well. Yeah. Jeanette, the script supervisor, sent him a text, obviously, and me one as well of her and Sheila working on another gig. I mean, amazing.
There's stories we can tell you about her, but Pat Short and John Kenny were a kind of a comedy duo that broke up, which is kind of ironic given the thing. Had also worked on some of Martin's plays. That's The Barman and The Barfly, and that combination is just, it's just honestly make a cat laugh. And you know, but also had a kind of we're able to carry the moments where there was really kind of madness in the house and real danger in the house. And you know, when Barry Keoghan comes in with all that beautiful vulnerability, but also oddness, and he walks in with a stick, and Pat Short is telling him, what's it now? You're back till April. What's it now? April, he says. It's like, so you cannot do that without not just buy-in, but massive talent, and also then a complete commitment to Martin and his work, and to the whole project. So honestly, this whole thing has been an extraordinary thrill, and we know we're representing all of those, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and there was no, nobody was inured to the excitement that we all felt embarking on this journey. None of us. We were all, I talked about the nervousness beforehand and all, we were all nervous, we all held the material kind of something that was very precious, and it was just this extraordinary collaboration together, you know, and we really, because we were welcomed into the two islands as well, you know, I feel in a way this story isn't about island people that we recognise at all, but the two islands we shot on, Inishmore and Achill, I feel like we're representing the people of those islands as well, because they brought us into their lives, and they brought us into their homes, and they worked on the film, so it really was an extraordinary collaborative effort across the board, you know.
I'll tell you, just again to go back to Gary, I remember when we were on Inishmore, in the Iron Islands for 3 weeks first of all, and that was the smallest, smaller of the two islands, so it was a total village, communal feel, and I can still see, because the reason I love, and thanks for the opportunity to mention Gary, was We used to come across each other on various modes of transport, as in bicycles or running or walking or on the back, on the back of a horse or something. But Gary Lydon, I remember him cycling up and chatting to him over a while, and before the scenes that were coming up had to be shot. And what he was going through at the time, and what the nerves and very lonely place, that's exactly right. And so the feeling of being on Inishmore in a community that had embraced us with what was our community, including crew, including everybody, involved in the movie, all the cast, all in that place on the one time. That's what the ensemble was.
Yeah. By the way, the location is like a character unto itself that really brings you all together. And I mean, even down to Jenny and Sammy, and I mean, it's there. And you kind of had a little hard time working with Jenny and Sammy. Like, was that a little bit?
Explain yourself.
Jenny
gave me one kick. It was my fault. I got too close to her. She's very young. Film sets can be an unnerving place at the best of times, especially if you don't know what your purpose is. And I don't think it would be fair to expect the donkey to know what her purpose was. I mean, she did. She just was like, walking. You'd see the first assistant director go, and everything would get deathly quiet on the set. From the chaos and the pandemonium of a working film set, deathly quiet, and you'd hear dingle, 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 dingle. And then she'd come, and her trainer would have a few carrots on her belt, and she'd show Jenny, okay, Jenny, come around, and then down there, and then down there, and she'd get it 3 or 4 times, and she'd be perfect, and then they'd say, and action, and she. But she was brilliant at that because literally a 2-year-old donkey was the boss of all these actors and producers and such like production. No, she just was. So you have to, you have to adapt, and you're in the presence of the honesty of nature. And that honestly was a gorgeous
thing. Go Jenny. So watching it for the 5th time. Yes. By the way, it's on HBO Max. It is right there. So if you got it, watch it again. The end of the film. Did you ask Martin what happens? Like, wait, what does this mean? Or what happens after he says, thanks for watching my dog?
Well, luckily and intuitively and practically, Martin made it happen that we shot that as pretty much the last scene of the shoot.
Yeah, it was great.
And why are you laughing? You think we wouldn't speak to each other ever again? But no, it was like it just meant we were going, as we said, we had left spaces for alternative takes on various things and different kind of ways of going on the same journey. And we weren't ultimately entirely sure, and I know Martin had left it deliberately in a place. There was an alternative ending that we did shoot that had, well, there was a part of a scene that was very interesting. And I don't want to share it with you because then people say, maybe you should have done that. But it's like, but I remember I was almost talking, at this time afterwards, almost saying, Martin had to say, no, remember we left that out. There was kind of things that were going into the kind of that last scene, and we spent a long time on that beach, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it was perfect. That was the last day.
Yeah,
perfect.
Mm-hmm. And we found it was all about small measures of what we knew. We knew what was in the stew. It was the recipe. It was like how much of this, how little of that. We knew the mix, and then by the time we got there, we had been on the journey of the film. The whole project was coming into this kind of denouement, and it kind of felt, and even at that, there were. I remember doing various takes where even the way we look at each other, the way the dog was, the emphasis on the possibility of hope or lack thereof. It'd be very interesting to see how many people believe there is a modicum of hope at the end, or whether
a chance for reconciliation, or is that the line in the sand being drawn too deep. Were you knackered in the last day? How did you feel?
No, I could have been there for a fortnight because I just wanted to get that one right.
Yeah.
And I think we felt going away from it. Whatever it was in there.
Yeah. Agreed.
The ambiguity of the ending. My take. is the modicum of the hope that the movie does end on, is the acceptance that the line has been drawn, but it's the acceptance.
Right.
That's just my take, okay. But the question I have, last question is, A, how proud are you of the film, of the reaction it's got? And B, maybe another talk with Martin about a third film together?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm so proud to be a part of the film. I mean, I've been acting for, I don't know, 25 years or something like that, and I've been blessed beyond all measure to be able to just be a working actor. You know, that's the thing. I just to be able to make a living as an actor, like just that alone, is a huge thing, and it's a struggle for so many people as well. So the fact that I'm working after 25 years is still a bit magic to me, right? And then the things I've done, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, sometimes you're proud, sometimes you're not. You're always proud of the endeavour. I've always found great pride in being part of the collective that is sharing your life with a bunch of people, whether it's for 2 or 3 weeks or 8 weeks on location, or sometimes up to 5 or 6 months. You always have an extraordinary experience, and my last 25 years has been a life in films, a lot of my life. So they mean a lot to me. They meant a lot to me as an audience member. They mean a lot to me now. They mean a lot to my kids, you know. So to be part of something is a long-winded answer to your question. To be part of something that has had the response that this had, that people have taken into their hearts, especially when I know, as you were saying, Gary, the members of the community of both islands, Achill and Inishmore, the crew on this, the cast on this, there was so much heart. Everywhere you looked, people were bringing their own stories. They were bringing their own history to work. And they were sharing stories about their grandfathers. And remember Michael Mullen on Inishmore?
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. One of the best days I ever had on a film. I was sitting on the, what's the name of that lovely blue diamond beach that was on Inishmore, whatever it was. This beautiful beach on the first island that we shot. Not the beach where Colin's house was. But I was sitting there on the wall one day, a couple of weeks into the shoot, we had about a week left. We shot 2 weeks, I think we had about a week left on Inishmore. I was sitting there, the sun was setting. By the way, we had the most unusual summer in Ireland that summer. It was just an anomaly. It was like Mykonos. You know, you couldn't find rain. It was unbelievable. And yeah, it was extraordinary. And I was watching the small waves lapping the shoreline, and the sun was setting, and then a van pulled up. And Michael Mullen was his name, and he's kind of like the unadorned mayor of the island. He owns the local shop, he rents the bicycles to the tourists, and on a busy day on Inishmore, there's 750 locals live there all year round. On a busy day, there can be upwards of 2,000 tourists that come on the boat. They spend 6 hours, they rent a bicycle, they cycle around, they get the bike back to the rental place, they get back on the boat and off they go. So it's 2 islands. The island during the day, which is kind of chaotic, and all these tourists cycling around and eating sandwiches and looking and pointing, and then it's quiet at night, amazing. But I was sitting on this wall and I heard a van pull up, and it pulled up right behind me, and I looked, and this, I don't know, maybe 60, burnt, sunburned, like a farmer's tan, shirt open. You could see the white line where the shirt is, and his chest was red, grey hairs springing, hard-working man, big back on him, huge hands. There was 2 rental bicycles, because they don't always, tourists, of course, being tourists, bring the bicycles back where they should. Sometimes they leave them and they walk back. So he does a circuit of the island in his van at night. There was 30 bicycles in the back of his van. He got down off his van, he picked up the bike, he put it in the back of his van, he picked up another bike, he put it in the back of his van. And then he went, oh Jesus, you're that actor fella. I said, yeah, how's it going? And I knew, I'd been told about him. I said, you're Michael? And he went, yeah, Michael. And I shook his hand, and he said, and he just looked out. And I looked at him, and he just looked out at the water for about 30 seconds, and it was gorgeous. And he went, something else, isn't it? And then he stayed for 10 minutes. And over that 10 minutes, I think I shared a bit with you, he told me about his father. He told me about the relatives that moved to America and lived their lives there and had kids there. He told me about a relative that came back. He told me about the losses that his family experienced. That 10 or 15 minutes, I shit you not, was one of the best 10 or 15 minutes I've had in 25 years making films. It will stay with me forever. I swear to God, just listen to his story. So that's just one example, and that kind of thing wasn't uncommon. People were bringing their hearts to work. So that, honestly, when it comes to the film being received the way it is, it's about all that, you know.
I think it's all interlinked. I was just thinking when you were talking there, Brittany Nafton, who I hadn't mentioned as part of the ensemble, who is the the postmistress, the shite news woman. But Breathing Afton is a Gaeilgeoir, in other words, she's from that part of the world, so where they speak Irish, Gaelic as their mother tongue, as the first tongue, and we got the musicians together, like one of the things though, the investment was the tune, and Martin had allowed me to put that tune together and to gather musicians that I would have known. So we had these people that I kind of knew too, that I kind of only met. And Breathing Afton, and then after the first 2 or 3 weeks rehearsal, do you remember that?
Yeah.
We went in and we said we put a few things down just to have as a kind of a guide track if we need it, but it was all going to be done live. But we put it down as a guide track. And we put down a few tunes in the recording studio or in Drew, in the place we're rehearsing. And then we went back and had a few tunes with the cast, all the rest of the cast. And Breathing Afton, who was the postmistress, being from that part of the county, do you remember she sang? She sang a couple of old Irish songs in Australia in Irish that would make the hair stand on the back of her head, and did make the hair stand on the back of her head. And to have her sitting in there telling you that that's shite news, or telling that that's shite news and stuff, and just there was an integration of everything about that, and as Colin said, it's important to understand that this is a make-believe world. Nobody's attempting to say that that's what happens on this island. It's a world that has been created, but the elements that were there in the feeling community, the great thing about it was, one of the things I'm most proud of, and I'll stop now because I know I'm going on, but like myself and Colin went in as tremendously sort of close soul buddies, Martin also, and nothing that happened in that did anything but to strengthen those bonds.
Yeah, that's true.
And so to have that then, and to have it presented and travel across the world, where in the Los Angeles way of welcoming and openness, it's been received by people. To hear in Venice that even before the subtitle came up, people were roaring, laughing at something. It just means that the local stories do travel.
Yeah.
That it brings an awful lot back to us of reaffirmation that this is what creating can do, and it's a credit to the people who go and are open enough to, you won't have caught every word, I bet you. But to kind of empathise with what we're doing, the fact that our communication with you guys came off, and that we were such a together body of people, it is one of the, certainly right at the top, the pinnacle of my creative life, for sure.
Well, gentlemen, congratulations. Thank you for again.